So the 2018 God of War was all about themes around personal growth. It was about questions like, can this character grow? Can Kratos overcome his past sins to become a better man? Can he raise his son to be a better man than he was? Kratos went through so much character growth and development in the previous game that a big question I had going into this new game was, is there any growth left for this character to do in Ragnarok? Is his story already complete? The answer to that first question is mostly no. His character doesn't do a lot more growing in Ragnarok, with one major exception that I'll talk about later. Instead, Kratos spends the story fulfilling the growth he's already done, proving that he really has grown by making better decisions, refusing to fall back into his old ways, and also by serving as a catalyst for positive growth and change in other characters' lives, like Freya and Thor. The answer to that second question, is his story already complete, is also no, because Ragnarok's story is not about personal growth. Instead, Ragnarok's story focuses on themes of destiny, fate, and choice. It deals with questions like, do our choices really matter? Are our choices predetermined by our nature? Can we overcome our nature to make different choices? Norse mythology is a world steeped in prophecy, and all the characters in this game, from Kratos to Atreus to Freya to Odin, are all obsessed with it. They are constantly fighting prophecy, falling for prophecy, struggling with prophecy. By the final climactic battle for the 9 realms, the game ends up having some really fascinating things to say about prophecy, fate, and choice. So let's get into it. The setting of the 2018 God of War was fairly dreary. Kratos and Atreus were journeying through a Norse mythology-inspired Midgard, where almost all humans were dead and all settlements were in ruins. However, in spite of the charnel setting, the game still felt really optimistic. There was a lot of humor from the dwarf characters Brok and Sindri, and Freya was a pretty healthy, positive character, and Kratos and Atreus were both slowly becoming better and better people over the course of the game. And while the world was uninhabited by humans, it was very green and pretty and filled with flourishing flora and fauna. Ragnarok, on the other hand, is set in a completely bleak and broken world. Fimbulwinter has arrived. Everything is cold and dead. Ragnarok, the end of the world, is coming and everyone knows it. There's this undercurrent of dread throughout the whole plot. Like everything you're doing is just taking you closer and closer to a disaster that cannot be stopped. Reflecting this broken setting, all of the characters feel broken too. At the start of the game, the once healthy Freya has completely lost herself in her search for revenge. When you rescue Tyr, he is emotionally broken and incapable of fighting. Even the villains feel broken, like Thor is this drunk, miserable loser who cannot escape from beneath the tyrannical thumb of his father. By the end of the game, Sindri, once a source of comedic relief, is as angry and wretched as the rest of them. Even Kratos, who went through so much positive personal growth in the last game, is clearly still burdened by his past sins and anxiety for the future. Also, a side note, it's really interesting to me how both Freya and Thor have become foils to Kratos in this new game, or have both sort of become Kratos. Previously, Kratos was a man who was driven by nothing but anger and revenge against someone who had hurt his family, and now that's exactly who Freya and Thor have become at the start of Ragnarok. Kratos has killed their children, and now their lives are consumed by that same search for vengeance. But back to the main analysis. All of these characters are deeply wounded. As gods, they have lived very long lives, and those long lives have been hard, full of mistakes, and they are ever haunted by those past mistakes. In the middle of all these miserable adults is Atreus, a child just trying to find his way, looking for his part in all this, searching for his destiny to find something that matters, some meaningful work he can do. The early hours of this game felt suffocating to me, and I felt really sorry for Atreus. This poor kid is surrounded on all sides by these adults who have lived for so long and are so overwhelmed by their wounds. When does he ever get to just be a kid, have fun, have some little joy in his life, make his own mistakes, out from under the eye of all these miserable adults? About a third of the way through, I got my wish when Atreus meets Boda, a giant who is about his age. This brief section of the game is full of light and fun. For the first time, this kid is getting to hang out with another kid, to have fun, to be silly. It's such a breath of fresh air. and shows by contrast what Atreus's life has lacked up to this point. As for all those miserable adults he left behind, as I mentioned earlier, Kratos himself doesn't go through a lot of new personal growth in Ragnarok, but he does fulfill the promise of his previous growth by serving as a sort of emotional catalyst for other characters, a source of positive change in their lives. You can see this happen 3 times over the course of the game. First, Kratos heals the rift between himself and Freya. He does this by being honest with her, being genuine, by listening to her, taking her problems seriously, by admitting to fault. In short, by being a good person, by being the man that the journey of the previous game made him into. Second is with Brok. It turns out that Brok died once and Sindri brought him back to life, but missing a part of his soul, and then lied about it. It's kind of a crazy side plot. The reveal of this lie almost leads to Brok and Sindri's relationship breaking apart again, but Kratos is able to stop that conflict before it even begins. He accomplishes this, mostly, by being a really freaking nice guy. There's this genuinely beautiful moment where Brok is feeling down about missing a part of his soul and being lied to by someone he trusted, and Kratos lifts his spirit by telling him his cool new spear needs the blessing of a truly great blacksmith. And Brok has the nature of a truly great artist, no matter what he thinks he's missing. And gosh, I'm tearing up just watching the scene again.
It needs the blessing of a great blacksmith.
What? No, I can't bless shit. I don't have all my soul bits. The blessing wouldn't mean squat.
It is the nature of a thing that matters, not its form.
All right. May this weapon strike true. May it be wielded with wisdom. May it be put down when its job is done.
It's amazing that this is the same Kratos that callously murdered all of those people in the original trilogy. The growth he has gone through is incredible. During this side plot, there's also a lot of talk about the difference between a person's form and their nature, which turns out to be a very important theme in the story, but I'm going to discuss more of that in a bit. The third time Kratos serves as a catalyst for another character's growth is towards the end of the game, during his battle with Thor. I expect most fans of the series were surprised by the portrayal of Thor in this game. I think I'm speaking for a lot of people when I say one of the things I was most looking forward to in this new game was the battle between Kratos and Thor. In the God of War series, the battles between Kratos and the gods have always been awesome, brutal, and crazy. And I expected this fight with Thor to be among the best. However, at the end of the game, when I actually reached this confrontation, I realized that I didn't want it to happen at all anymore. And that's because of how much the writers humanized Thor in this game. In God of War, the gods are almost always arrogant, selfish assholes. And when they get brutally stomped on by Kratos, you never really feel that bad about it. Even when Kratos killed Hera or Atreus killed Modi in previous games, which were pretty unjustified killings, those gods were so obnoxious that I couldn't be that upset about it. However, by the end of Ragnarok, you've spent a lot of time with Thor. And more importantly, his family. He has a wife and daughter who care about him. He has personal demons that he is trying to overcome. Even if he's failing, you can see over the course of the game that just like Kratos before, Thor could choose to be a better man than he is. The potential is there. By the end of the game, you don't want Thor to die. You want him to choose to be a better father to his daughter.
I know you're disappointed.
Disappointed? No. That was a glorious fight. You can't even say you're sorry this time, can you? Because what's one more broken promise? Grandfather treated you like crap. You were struggling. I get it. But you can't just... We're here for you. Mom and I are here for you. Even when you're here. We love you. You know that. I just thought this was behind us.
I fucked up.
Yeah, you fucked up.
And at the end of the game, after their fight, Kratos does manage to convince him to start on that new path, and it feels like such a victory. It doesn't work, of course, because Odin freaking murders him right afterwards. Like, seriously, f this guy. Anyway, back to Atreus and Angerboda. Unfortunately, Atreus' time with Angerboda is spoiled by a prophecy she reveals to him concerning his fate. The giants have prophesied that Atreus will go on to serve the evil tyrannical Odin, and then his father will die. Atreus is understandably upset and vows to fight the prophecy. Angerboda tells him not to bother. She says it's easier to accept his fate and enjoy the time he has now. She implies that no matter what he does, fate is rigid, destiny is absolute, and those prophecies will come true, whether he believes it or not. Interestingly, Angerboda has her own struggles with destiny, or more accurately, with a lack of destiny. According to the prophecy, her part in the story ends here. She is supposed to vanish from the story, and she's not happy about it, and ultimately does not accept this fate. In contrast to her previous feelings about the absolute quality of prophecy. Kratos already saw the prophecy concerning his death at the end of the previous game, and he gets a new prophecy in Ragnarok, with some really interesting additional commentary. Kratos meets the Norns, who are basically Norse mythology's version of oracles. The Norns tell Kratos that he will kill the Norse god Heimdall to protect his son, then start Ragnarok, then be killed himself. However, the Norns define destiny in a very different way than it is described in most stories. They say, there is no destiny, there is no grand design, no script, only the choices you make. That your choices are so predictable merely makes us seem prescient. The reason the Norns can predict the choices people will make is because they understand those people's natures. It's not destiny or fate by the usual definition, as some kind of binding script from which you cannot deviate, but instead destiny by choice. Destiny determined by the choices you are most likely to make, and those choices are determined by your nature. I'd like to insert here the folktale about the scorpion and the frog. In this folktale, a scorpion asks a frog to carry him across a river. The frog says, "No way. If I carry you, you'll sting me because you're a scorpion." And that's what scorpions do. The scorpion says, "No, man, I would never sting you while you're carrying me across the river. If I did sting you then, you would die, and then I would drown in the river." This makes sense to the frog, so he starts carrying the scorpion across the river on his back. Halfway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog. As he dies, the frog asks the scorpion, "Why did you do that?" The scorpion says, "I'm a scorpion, bro. It is in my nature to sting. I cannot do anything else." Then the frog dies, and the scorpion sinks into the river and drowns. That folktale is a story about nature, and how difficult it is to overcome your nature, even when facing the consequence of self-destruction. That scorpion in the story wasn't destined to drown in that river, but he could not overcome his nature as a killer to make a better choice. This is what the Norns are saying. Kratos' nature is such that he will make the choice to kill Heimdall. Then his choices will lead him to Ragnarok, and then his choices will lead him to his death. The only thing that can save Kratos' life is if he can overcome his nature and make a different choice. Greek and Norse mythology both are full of stories about prophecy, about how characters who try to defy prophecy end up fulfilling it anyway. For a bit, it seems like this is the same sort of trap that Kratos and Atreus fall for. Kratos immediately begins planning to kill Heimdall to protect his son, while Atreus immediately goes to Asgard to spy on Odin while pretending to serve him, and both are very clearly playing along with the prophecy, making the wrong choices, giving in to the worse angels of their nature. But then, to my surprise, they have a mature conversation about it. They are open and honest with each other about their anxieties and their worries, and they come to an understanding. Together, they will choose to be better, to make better choices, to avoid their worst fates. For a little while, it feels like their fate really has been averted. However, disaster finally strikes. Odin reveals that he has been pretending to be Tyr all along and kills Brok. Again, fuck this guy. Brok's murder flings them all right back into Destiny's clutches. They choose vengeance, they choose war, because it is in their nature to avenge the murder of their friend, to put a stop to Odin's tyranny, even if it means their own self-destruction. This last chapter of Ragnarok's story, the preparations for war and the final battle, is pretty rushed. Freyr's like, alright, I'm gonna go unite the elves, see you later. And Mimir is like, yeah, I'm gonna go recruit the army of the dead, be back in 5. Then half an hour later, they're both back and have already accomplished both of those seemingly impossible tasks. And to be honest, I think a few other sections of the plot feel pretty rushed too. I think the developers tried to cram a bit too much into this game. There's so much story here. I really think it probably should have been divided into 2 different games. But back to the analysis. Kratos and Atreus' part in the preparation for war is to recruit Surtur, a primordial fire giant who is prophesied to destroy Asgard. Surtur's time in the game is pretty short, but very important, because through his choices we see how prophecy can simultaneously be fulfilled and subverted. Prophecy says that he must be united with his wife, Sinmara, then the two will combine into some giant creature with the power to destroy Asgard, and with it, Surtur and Sinmara will be destroyed as well. However, Surtur refuses. He loves Sinmara and refuses to be a part of any plan that will lead to her destruction. His love for her has changed his nature, and so he is making a different choice. They do eventually find an alternate path to transforming Surtur into a giant monster even without Sinmara's involvement, saving her life, and thus both fulfilling and subverting that prophecy. He fulfills the prophecy of getting really big and destroying Asgard, while subverting the prophecy that Sinmara must be destroyed too. This is a foreshadowing of the same fulfillment and subversion that Kratos and Atreus will soon engage in. The battle for Ragnarok commences, and it is as grand and terrible and costly and horrific as any battle can be. But midway through, Atreus realizes that Odin is using innocent lives as a barrier, and proceeding with Ragnarok as prophesied will mean the death of those innocents. He tries to close his heart to their suffering, the same way his father closed his heart to the suffering of innocents during his destruction of Greece all those years ago. Kratos realizes what's happening, can see that Atreus' nature is changing. Atreus' nature is compassionate and empathetic, and he is shutting that part of his nature off. And Kratos tells him no.
What are you doing?
Son, listen closely. You feel their pain because that is who you are. And you must never sacrifice that. Never. Not for anyone. I was wrong, Atreus. I was wrong. Open your heart. Open your heart to their suffering. That is your mother's wish. And mine as well. Today, son. Today, we will be better.
This is Kratos' final moment of major character growth, when he finally realizes that, even in battle, even when pursuing revenge, compassion is not a weakness. Empathy is not a weakness. They don't have to destroy all of Asgard. They don't have to destroy all the Asgardians. They don't have to destroy the entire Norse pantheon. They only need to destroy one man, the one evil god who is responsible for all of this. The one evil god who deserves it. With compassion, empathy, diplomacy, and strength, they can fulfill the prophecy of destroying Odin while subverting the prophecy of the destruction of the 9 realms. In this moment, Kratos' love for his son has changed his nature, allowed him to make a new choice. In some ways, the final confrontation feels a bit trivial. The grand climactic moment of the story is not the battle, it's that moment when Kratos chooses justice over vengeance. And by the fight with Odin, that moment has already passed. The rest is just falling action. Odin is an example of a character completely incapable of changing his nature. It is impossible for him to ever make a new choice, because he can never be anything other than himself, and he is predictably destroyed for it. Meanwhile, in the final scene, we get a glimpse of the new path Kratos has forged for himself with his choices. A future version of himself who is a builder god, a beloved god, a god of peace. The final theme of God of War Ragnarok is this: changing your fate is as simple and sometimes as impossible as making a different choice.
Sofna, Apfra, Desu, Sofna, Hithan, Sofna, Sofna, Sofna. What do we do with him?
I swore I would never rob from you the choice between life and death.
I have waited so long for this moment. And now that I'm here, I don't need this to make me whole.
We stopped his madness. That's all that matters. That's what comes next.
Oh yeah. Woo!